Hello, friends, and welcome to this next new episode of the Claim Your Magic podcast with me, Sabrina Scott. And it might sound a little bit different because I am recording in a soundproof box. So let me know how the sound sounds, switching things up. So first of all, happy Friday, everybody. Thank you so much for sharing some of your Friday with me, some of your weekend, or if you're listening to this a little bit out of time and place, whenever that happens to be, thank you so much for giving me some of your times. I know time is precious. So here on the Claim Your Magic podcast with me, Sabrina Scott, I talk all about how to claim your magic and change your life. And I talk a lot about a variety of things: life, love, spirituality, health and wellness, specifically, broadly, and witchcraft, magic, feminine energy, tarot, divination, mediumship, and everything in between. Like literally so many different things I talk about on this podcast. Today, those of you who are in my sphere will probably already know I want to talk about failure and failing in public. So I have been running a Kickstarter for my next graphic novel this whole entire month of October. And of course, as soon as I clicked live, launch, I got sick as a dog for about 2.5 weeks. And interestingly, I do think that sickness was my body being really uncomfortable with the leap of faith and the attempt to grow and just getting out of my comfort zone and putting myself out there. There were probably a lot of triggers that my body was like, we need to shut down and stop ourselves from really feeling this. So the long and short of it is, over 23 days or so, 22 days, the Kickstarter got to around $4,000. And my goal was $13,300. And I wanted to do this go big or go home type of thing and just try to get this print run of 500 off the ground. And I decided, you know what? There is no fucking chance in hell that I'm going to make it to 13,000 in 10 more days. Probably not going to happen. So I decided to admit defeat and admit failure. I decided to just cancel it and let everyone know I have failed. And it's so funny because I remember back when I was thinking of doing a Kickstarter, my big devil on my shoulder kept telling me, what if you fail? It's going to be really public. It's going to be a very public failure. Everyone will know how much money you did raise and how much money you didn't raise and how many people backed. And what if it's a really small number and you have so many followers that everyone is going to know that no one likes you and you're a big scam and blah, blah, blah. Just these very silly paranoias and fears. Everyone's going to know that no one likes you and you suck and blah, blah, blah. And you're actually not that popular, yada, yada. And I was like, that would be so humiliating. It would be so embarrassing. I would just die of embarrassment if I failed so publicly. And I decided to launch the project anyway. And this is because I think that failure is inevitable. And this is going to sound counterintuitive because obviously, we can reframe it, which I'm going to do later on in this podcast episode. But if we do anything in life, if we try, if we're not failing, it means we're not trying. If we're never failing, it means we're never getting out of our comfort zone. If we're never failing, it means we're paralyzed by fear and too paralyzed by fear to actually do anything and change our lives and really try to create a shift in our situation. And so I decided, you know what, I'm going to try this. I'm going to get out of my comfort zone and make myself potentially look very stupid. if I fail. I'm just going to do it because why the fuck not? The alternative is to stay still and stagnant and to not grow and to not learn and to not take that leap of faith and get that additional data. Do people want this format of this book? Maybe they don't. But I have to find out. How much do people want it? And so, in many ways, doing this project, this Kickstarter, my fear came true. I did fail. It did not work out. But within actually not even 24 hours, within like an hour of canceling the Kickstarter, I made a new Kickstarter. I did not spend any time feeling sad or sorry for myself or wallowing at all. 0 minutes. And I just made a new Kickstarter. I submitted it to them for their review. They approved it within maybe 7 hours. And then within maybe 12 hours, tops, boom, we are ready to go again. Kickstarter is live once more. And that initial failure taught me some things about Kickstarter I wouldn't have known otherwise. I learned that probably we should start with the lowest possible number and then just incorporate a bunch of stretch goals where it's like, at least the project's going to happen. And if it happens to be less of a print run than I would ideally want, at least we're doing one. So start with the lowest possible number and go from there. And since this learning, I had a really lovely chat with someone over DMs who has had a ton of successful Kickstarters, who told me like a lower number is better because people want to fund stuff that has reached its funding goal. And personally, I do need that money to print these books. But for more established Kickstarter people who don't need the money, setting a goal of like $100 or something, it means they're going to make that goal times like 100 million%, and it will get boosted everywhere, which is super interesting. This is all stuff I totally did not know and hadn't thought about before I decided to try the Kickstarter. And I also learned that a month is way too long. Like, if people are going to pledge, they're going to pledge. And if they're not, they're probably not going to wait a whole month to decide. So my new Kickstarter campaign, I think, is only 8 or 9 days. That's it. And we are, as of this recording, I think at, I don't even know, 70% or something. 70%. So hopefully I will get to that $4,000, the new goal, to do a print run of 100. And yeah, 100 is less of a print run than I would like to do. But you know what? I just want to do it. I want to do a print run. And if it happens to be 100, not 500, that's fucking okay. And it's been such an interesting journey, right? To force myself to take such a public risk. To take such a risk that might be a little bit humbling, a little bit embarrassing. You know, there's a lot of different words that we could use to describe, but it makes me think of how many people I've talked to who aren't trying ABC, whether that's in their career, in their love life, in their sex life, in their creative life, because they are afraid. Afraid of being embarrassed, and afraid of being laughed at, afraid of failing, afraid of it not working out, afraid of being rejected. And so many people, and like, don't get me wrong, this is me sometimes too, but so many people, like, that fear, it paralyzes us. It clogs up our energy. It stops everything. It's just halts the flow. And we're all going to feel fear at some point. But the real question is, what do we do with it? Do we allow the fear to immobilize us? Or do we just keep it moving? Do we act despite being afraid? And one of the things I've learned from all my PhD research on trauma and related things is how much fear and paralysis and inaction is a symptom and a sign there is some trauma there, probably. And so obviously we work through a lot in therapy with our therapists and counselors and social workers or whoever it is we're working with, maybe psychiatrists, who knows. Everyone's working with different conglomeration of folks. I think that's great. In addition to that work of speaking and talking, and maybe medication for some folks, other different techniques and modalities to heal. In addition to that, a real form of therapeutics, I think, is action, is movement, is doing, is putting one foot in front of the other, and then it gets easier and easier the more you do it. After you take one step, then the next step becomes easier. And the one after that, even easier still, until you're walking and like, okay, this is easy, I'm not even thinking about it, till you're jogging and running, and who knows, maybe you're like a marathon runner after that. But there is something so important about movement that gets us unclogged, unstuck, energetically, physically, creatively. Whatever it is. Movement. And I've heard this, with people with creative blocks, like the fear of the blank page, they're just paralyzed looking at it. I've heard this around people with their sex life, like if they have a dead bedroom. Like the solution to that usually is like schedule some sexy times. And then it eventually just happens naturally because that block, that paralysis, that fear has been gotten rid of or faced head on through movement and action. And there is so much about this process that I would not have learned if I hadn't done it and if I hadn't just failed. And I think there's something really liberating for me as well to be able to just say out in public, out loud to you guys, like, yes, I failed loudly and publicly, and look at me, I'm still alive, and it's all good. Because I think so many people are afraid to fail. And if I can be an example to show folks it's okay, then I will. As I think a lot of people do put us like internet folks up on a pedestal and think that we never have a bad day or like never fail or never fuck up or never have like a wonky emotion where we like, I don't know, act weird or something, or are rude unnecessarily or are just human. I think sometimes people project that onto us internet people, where there are all these assumptions made of like, oh, you never fail, blah, blah, blah. And to be fair, I often don't, which is something that I've had to sit with this. And it's a reminder that, okay, well, the fact that I haven't really failed at anything in a while, that is a sign that I'm not taking as many risks as I fucking should be in order to remain connected to my vitality and my creative fucking life source energy that we all have. And failure is not the end of the world. I got a really nice comment on my announcement on my old Kickstarter that I canceled. Basically, it was just so nice. Like, oh, you didn't fail. You're all good. Like, it's cool. Keep it going. And it's like, yeah, no one is going to think less of us if we fail. Much more likely, they are going to think, hey, that person's brave and courageous and they tried something new. They're really living. They're in their flow. They're alive. And so I really hope that this little ramble inspires you to try more, fail more, and just leap and act. And maybe it doesn't go the way you want it to, but know that you're at least making movement. You're at least learning something from that process. And that means it was never a waste. And just pick back up and try again. And being able to do that, I think, is a form of play. And when we're able to play and laugh at ourselves and laugh at life and laugh at the situation, to me, that is a really big sign that we are moving forward in our ability to heal our trauma. And this can happen, I think this manifests itself in so many different ways, right? So I think back to a Pilates class I took about a month ago, and been a long time since I had taken a super traditional Pilates class, like balancing like your back on the ball and all this shit, and like balancing in this really intense way. And I remember I was doing the thing and I was trying to balance on the ball, and my balance is not what it used to be because I'm out of practice, and I just literally like rolled over. Like my arms like up above my head towards the sky in a little diving position, and I just like slowly rolled one way off the ball, and I could not stop laughing. And I felt so awkward about it because the class was so quiet and no one else was laughing and no one else had fallen off their ball, but I just like fucking rolled. You guys, it was hilarious. And I found it so hysterically funny. Like I just kept spontaneously laughing for the entire rest of the class. And I'm so glad that no one called me out or said anything to me, but I just found it so funny. And to me, this is a really great sign of trauma healing, that I find that shit fucking hilarious instead of embarrassing and humiliating. Like, I was more worried about, like, oh my god, am I disturbing other people with my laughter, rather than, did I look stupid? I probably did, and that's what is so funny about it. And there is something about being able to play, laugh at ourselves, get back up on the ball. I did get back up on the ball. I tried again. I fell off again. And eventually I got it with, like, supporting myself a little bit more than I think I was supposed to. My abs need some work, you guys. But there was just something playful and fun about that. And maybe this is something that gets easier as we get older, as we heal our trauma, as we just realize it's not a fucking big deal. Maybe it does get easier to not be so uptight, to realize we're all human, we're imperfect, we are going to fail, we're going to flop, we're going to roll. Things are not always going to go the way we want them to. And if we can learn something and just be playful and have fun with it, then I think that's great. And, you know, I think I've learned a lot of lessons from this experience of failing so publicly and so potentially embarrassingly, where now I kind of know that I can try a lot more other stuff. And if that doesn't get like 10 out of 10 ratings, or maybe people don't like it or whatever, and then who cares? But it makes me feel more courageous to try more things, to get out of my comfort zone more, and to experiment and explore even more than I have been. And so this has actually inspired me to release my rape poetry book before I release Body Magic in the new year. And I have never released a poetry book. I don't know if you guys know this about me, but I have performed poetry extensively, and I used to be pretty decently active in like a writing, performance, like Canadian lit type of space, and I'm not really active in that anymore for a variety of reasons. But I used to be writing poetry, speaking poetry, writing to perform out loud very often. And it's been a really long time since I've done that. And a lot of the poems from this time that I've kind of unearthed a lot of them are 10 years old. Some of them are 8 years old. And they're so intense and raw. And some of them are so full of rage and anger and disappointment and pain. And it was so cool to go and read all those and to compare it to how I am now. And I'm like, I'm so chill. And like, I forget that I even had that experience more often than not. And so I'm really excited to continue to work on this book of poems from that time in my life and release that and get that out before Body Magic. And if that poetry book of really vulnerable poems about surviving sexual assault, if no one likes it, I've decided I don't really care, because I'm doing it for myself and I'm doing it because it's uncomfortable. And I hope that people will get something out of it in a similar way that I hope that they'll get something out of Body Magic when it comes out. Because I do think that survivors sharing our voices is really important, and it's a scary thing to share. And I think that fear, the scariness, means it's something I absolutely need to do because it's a new experience and it's vulnerable and it's scary. And how great is that? And if no one likes it, again, it's cool. It's cool. So I really hope that wherever you're at, whatever you do in your life, that this episode inspires you to take more risks and to see how many times you can fail. Because if you're not failing, chances are you're not challenging yourself enough. If you're not failing, the risks you're taking and the leaps you're making are not big enough. They're not audacious enough. They're not gutsy enough. They're not courageous enough. You can do more than that. You can be more than that. Let's try. And I think moving away from this perfectionistic paralysis that comes from fear is a really great thing to do right now, especially as we're easing into Scorpio season. And my next episode on this podcast will be about Scorpio season. But I've already talked for long enough, so I'm going to leave it there. I would like to invite you to pledge to my brand new Kickstarter with the lower amount. You can find it on Kickstarter by searching Body Magic Sabrina Scott, and it should be there. Hopefully by the time you're listening to this, it's already funded or almost funded, so touch wood, fingers crossed. Hope you guys have a really wonderful weekend, and Halloween, aka Samhain, is also coming up, so I'm sure I'll do an episode about that for you guys sometime soon as well. Thank you so much for listening. My website is sabrinamscott.com. My Instagram is sabrinamscott. And my YouTube is youtube.com/sabrinascott. And what else? Those are the main places that I am. So let's leave it there for now. If you want to send me an email, you can do so at ceo@sabrinamscott.com or send something through the contact form on my website. Oh yeah, and then my clothing, if you want to buy a cute hoodie or something, or a cute hat, is shopsabrinamscott.com. Okay, friends, thank you so much for listening. Much love. Take care. Bye.